taken that according to St. Matthew chapter 18. At that time Jesus spoke to his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a king, who would take an account of his servants. And when he had begun to take the account, one was brought to him that owed him 10,000 talents. And as he had not wherewith to pay it, his Lord commanded that he should be sold, and his wife and children, and all that he had, and payment to be made. But that servant falling down besought him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. And the Lord of that servant, being moved with pity, let him go, and forgave him the debt. But when the servant was gone out, he found one of his fellow servants, that owed him 100 piece. And laying hold of him, he throttled him, saying, Pay what thou owest. And his fellow servant, falling down, besought him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. And he would not, but went and cast him into prison, till he paid the debt. Now his fellow servants, seeing what was done, were very much grieved, and they came and told their Lord all that was done. Then his Lord called him, and saith to him, Thou wicked servant, I forgave thee all the debt, because thou besoughtest me. Shouldst not thou then have had compassion also on thy fellow servant, even as I had compassion on thee? And his Lord, being angry, delivered him to the torturers, until he paid all the debt. So also shall my heavenly Father do to you, if you forgive not every one his brother from your hearts. Thus far the words of today's Holy Gospel. Well then, in the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. So today, this 21st Sunday after Pentecost, here in Kansas City, the weekend of the meeting with the Bishop Pfluger and many others, discussing the papacy. Much announced since last year. There was going to be this conference concerning the papacy. Now the papacy conference, I guess, comes to an end today. And then also, just a week ago, or just a little more than a week ago, I guess it was, Father Pfluger gave an interview to the Church Review, the Kirchliche Umschau in Germany, German Catholic publication, concerning the present situation of the society. And this situation we want to discuss, this interview we want to discuss in this sermon, in this talk today. During the course of this last month, also, Father Giselle and I just returned to the United States last Saturday. It was 8 days ago. And we were gone for a little more than a month, traveling throughout Asia in our old stomping grounds. And there visiting the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, and Korea, and then Japan. And so these Americans don't usually know geography that well. That's the other side of the world, the blob over there. And so that we visited these places, visited a little bit more than 300 faithful during this time. Then we came back through England, visited another 15 or 20 faithful or so in England, and then returned to America last week. We also visited several priests during the course of this journey, and a priest joined us in the battle and put his full commitment behind us in the same position as us, a Japanese priest by the name of Father John Narihai, who is living in Tokyo, a traditional priest in Tokyo, Japan, who was pushed aside from the society by our local society superiors 8 or 10 years ago, and has been on his own for many years and hasn't had contact with traditional priests for many years, at least the last 8 or 10 years, and so very happy to have contact again with traditional priests, and holds very firmly to our understanding of this battle in which we find ourselves. So that we find 27 priests or so who at this time are holding the same theological position, essentially the same theological position as us, about the grave crisis within tradition, and they're speaking about it throughout the world. So Father John Narihai is one of the ones that just came and joined us, and also Father Vargas is joining with us, a Mexican priest who was stationed in Spain, and he has just joined us a couple of weeks ago, and will be doing work in Mexico and also perhaps in South America. But in any case, consideration today on the new theology. The new theology of the Society of St. Pius X And as the days progress, as we have new conferences and new communications from our superiors, we find a better explanation of this new theology. And we have to say that there is truly, or there are truly now, two different theologies. Two different theologies within the Society of St. Pius X, and there is no point in saying that there are not. There is the old theology, and the old theology which was given to us by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, the founder of our society, who gave us our spirit, gave us our directives, gave us our direction, how to profess the faith during this grave, in fact most grave crisis since the beginning of the history of the Church. The crisis of modernism, which St. Pius X calls the grand sewer of all heresies of all time. So we are not dealing with one heresy today, we are dealing with every heresy. We are getting towards the end of the world, and all the evils of the last 6,000 years are coming together, and all the evils are going to be working together to destroy the Church of Christ. Of course, there will not be success. They will not succeed in destroying the Church of Christ, the true Catholic Church. But they will succeed, and have succeeded, in destroying many, many, many millions of souls. And so it's a grave fight. And there are many casualties to the devil, many casualties of faith in our time. And now the Society of St. Pius X looks as though it is the latest casualty and of the modernist attack of Rome. And this becomes evident. Father Pfluger, remember, is not just an ordinary priest of the Society of St. Pius X. He is the first assistant. And he is speaking in the German language here to a German paper. One priest told us in this journey here, he did wish to remain anonymous, so I won't say his name, but one priest told us who's very involved in the crisis in the society and very aware of what's happening in Europe. He says, in America, you want to see what's going to happen in America? You look to Canada. And you see Canada is always a few years ahead in liberalism, in the liberal laws, and then those laws, a few years later, they happen in Canada, in America. So what's going to happen in America? Well, it's what's happening in Canada today. We see that in the realm of politics. So when you look at the Society of St. Pius X, look at what's happening in Germany. Germany is in the leading edge of liberalism in the Society of St. Pius X. And you can see what is happening in Germany today is what's going to happen worldwide in the SSPX tomorrow. And so it's very significant that this interview was made in Germany by a German-speaking priest of the Society who happens to be the first assistant of the Society of St. Pius X. Right now in the German district, all controversy is forbidden. Not only the controversy about the Holocaust, the famous controversy that was brought to light in 2009, but any controversy, negative controversy, cannot be brought forward. Only positive communication. No criticism will be allowed. And so that not only of the Superior General or of the deal with Rome, but any seemingly or perceived to be controversial topic. We are just watering down our faith, and it's being done worldwide. During the course of this journey, I met with my brother who is of the same opinion as us as regards theology, but he had to admit to me that he is not able to say everything he wishes to say, or everything he wants to say. He totally agrees that the liberalism in the Society of St. Pius X is terrible, and that it must be combated, and he is trying to combat it by communicating with the priests on a priestly level, but not speaking to the faithful. And he realizes that he is handicapped, that he cannot communicate openly, and this is a new problem within the SSPX. Now, Father Pfluger gives a talk here to the German paper, the German Church Review, and they ask, just a few months ago, the Vatican seemed to be on the verge of granting canonical recognition of the Society. It seems now that all the efforts were in vain. Bishop Mueller, the new prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, suggested as much in several recent interviews. We almost had a deal with Rome. It seems as though it was in vain. And Father Pfluger responds, all efforts were not in vain, but an agreement in the near future is improbable. All efforts were not in vain. So that those that are saying, don't worry about it, there's nothing going to happen with the deal with Rome, we're not going to, we've learned from our mistake of getting too close to Rome, we won't make that mistake again, it's false according to Father Pfluger. and this is very, very important, in both our estimation, the estimation of the SSPX and the Curia, any agreement would be pointless unless we are on the same page about what the faith really means. See, originally in 2006 and before, we will not have anything to do with Rome until Rome converts to the Catholic faith. Now we have shifted to, we cannot make a deal with Rome until Rome and us have the same understanding of what the faith really means. So now what matters is our understanding. Before, what mattered was the one unchanging Catholic faith of the last 2,000 years, which the Romans must convert to or forget it. Now it is, we still use the term faith, but now we're not talking about the faith, but our understanding. We've switched from the objective to the subjective. The objective is, what is really happening? Is the house burning down, or is the house not burning down? And the firemen get together. Do you feel it's burning down? I don't feel it's burning down. Do you feel it's burning down? I feel it is burning down. Oh, we've got a problem. Let's have an agreement. How about let's agree that it's in danger of burning down? Fine, let's go have a cup of coffee and a donut. So they agree that it's in danger of burning down. A real fireman says, is the house on fire or not? If it's not on fire, I remember in Post Falls, we used to have false fire alarms every day. Our police alarm would always call the fire department. We would never get to the phone on time, so they would have to come. The fire department was right across the street. So they knew it was us, and they knew it wasn't a fire. But by law, they had to come. So the fire truck came about 10 times a week across the road. One time when it came, I went to turn the alarm off. It was too late in the sacristy. I opened the door of the sacristy, and there was an axe of a fireman coming to my head. Because he was mad, and he was going to break down the door. And when he went to break down the door, it was the same time that I opened the door, and there was an axe. He goes, I thought there was an emergency. So I was going to break the door down. He knew there wasn't, but he was mad because of being called so many times. But nonetheless, the firemen are discussing, is the house on fire? And some say the house is on fire, put the fire out. Others say the house is not on fire. They decide to discuss the matter, and they come to an agreement that the house is in danger of fire. And this is what's happening. Not what is really happening to the church, but what our opinions are about what's happening in the church. This common understanding was to be expressed in the doctrinal declaration. That's the declaration of April 15, 2012, which a couple of weeks ago, Bishop Pfluger said he went too far. He overdid it. Maybe he made a mistake, but Father Pfluger says no. We took ample time in drawing it up in April 2012. Bishop Pfluger, our Superior General, presented a preliminary and formal draft, but to our great surprise, this text was rejected by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. To our great surprise. What does this mean? According to the Neo-SSPX, the Rome of Pope Benedict XVI and Menzigan almost have the same ideas about the Catholic faith. How did that happen? The Rome of Benedict XVI says it's the greatest gift that came in the 20th century was Vatican II, and they just celebrated October 11th, 2012. And the Rome of Benedict XVI says the spirit of Assisi is alive and well and must be the spirit of our church. The Rome of Benedict XVI says that Muslims have a lot to offer the church, and Jews can be saved as Jews without needing to follow Jesus Christ. How is that similar to the teaching of Archbishop Marcel Pfeiffer? How is that similar? Oh, there's only a few minor little misunderstandings we have to clear up. No, there are not a few minor misunderstandings we have to clear up. There is a grave, modernist, growing modernist, heretical teaching in Rome, and it is getting worse, not better, in the Roman world, and that the solution is that they convert to the faith, not that we have some kind of common understanding. We almost had a deal in May of 2012, and the only reason we didn't have the deal is because on June 13th, Rome surprisingly rejected this deal. To our great surprise, this text was rejected by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. How do you account for Rome's change of direction? Rome changed. Rome did not change. Well, there is a group of strongly opposed there is a group strongly opposed to our regularization. Because, and this is the part of the new teaching of the SSPX, there are several elements of the new teaching. This is one of them. Because if Rome accepts us, such an official recognition would in effect be a sign that the post-Vatican II era is outdated and that a new chapter has begun. This is the key illusion that they are feeding us traditional Catholics. If Rome accepts us, then Rome is accepting the truth. Now, I have spoken to many priests in the Novus Ordo, and spoken to many faithful in the Novus Ordo, and I haven't run across one that agrees with Father Pfluger. Each one of them has told me, you guys are coming back to the church. Like one priest, an Indo priest I met, when I told him I was a priest of the Society of St. Pius X, he said, well, you guys are coming back. I've heard you're coming back to the church. I'm really excited. Welcome to home, sweet Rome. And so other priests have said the same thing. Outside of tradition. You see, in our little traditional circles, we have forgotten to look at the world on the outside. What is going on inside of the world of the 1 billion Catholics that are not traditional Catholics in the Catholic Church? They are not becoming more traditional. They are not changing their theology. And when they learn that the SSPX is coming back to Rome, they believe we are leaving our former extreme right-wing extremism and we are coming back to a balanced, proper faith like the other orders did, such as the Fraternity of St. Peter, the Good Shepherd Institute, and St. John Vianney, and so on. This is an illusion. And he brings up this illusion in the beginning. The false belief that if we go back to Rome, it is a sign that Rome is converting. The truth is, it's a sign that we are converting, not Rome. This illusion was said before, and it's very important that this is a recent article, a recent interview, which is on sspx.org. It's not on rumor.com. It's on sspx.org. It's and on dc.org. It's an official interview and is put forward as the teaching of the Society in October of 2012. Do you think there could be a new development? Do you think there can be any hope of a renewal? Not just think, I know. The facts are what they are. So the church is going down throughout the world. I know there's going to be a reunion. I know there's going to be a regularization. We just hit a glitch. As Joseph, and he mentioned some facts, 120,000 Catholics leaving the church every year in Germany, and different bad things that are happening. But as Joseph Ratzinger, as a council father 50 years ago, spoke of a church, quote, imbued with the spirit of paganism, which the council did its part to usher in. He's giving them, this is speak for us. To make you believe that Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, who is now Pope Benedict XVI, is in fact in secret a very traditional Pope. Because even 50 years ago, he said there's a spirit of paganism in the church. But 50 years later, he says, God's greatest gift to the 20th century was Vatican II. But Father Pfluger gives an impression that Joseph Ratzinger has a different idea. And because we don't read the mainstream press, because we don't read Zenit, because we don't follow the Osservatore Romano, because we don't follow the mainstream Catholic media, we are only getting our news from our little bitty channels. And just like in a cult, they're telling you, don't learn anything except what we tell you. What comes from the official approved channels. You cannot go to the internet. You have an internet which has only one gateway. You can go to www.sspx.org with a link to DC and no other links, no other sites, no other information. Because we are going to tell you what you need to know. And if you don't need to know it, we won't tell you. And you must understand that we are protecting you. That's what you must understand. So we get the impression that Cardinal Ratzinger is is really a man of tradition, when in fact he's not. And then they talk about the conservatives. So Father Pfluger goes on. This great collapse of the church will leave only the conservatives holding fast, meaning those who quite simply wish to believe as the church has always believed and to persevere in their Catholic faith. With those holding fast, we will no longer need to argue. Agreement in faith will soon follow. This is a second very important change in the Society's doctrine. We no longer need to argue with fellow conservatives. You used to hear this argument very much in the anti-abortion debate. While Protestants believe abortion is bad, Catholics believe abortion is bad, even many atheists believe abortion is bad. So why don't we not bother about our disagreements with each other on little things such as the faith, and simply stick together in our fight for anti-abortion? Also, there's a group that call themselves the ecumenical traditionalists, who are so sick of, the Fraternity of St. Peter, the Society Vicandis, Society of St. Pius X, and then Father Bimbob's chapel. And so they go to each chapel every week. One week is Society Vicandis, next week is Society, next week is Indo, next week is Father Bimbob. And so they go around saying all that matters is the Latin Mass. Now Father Pfluger is beginning to enter into that idea, that theology, that the faith is no longer essential. We will no longer need to argue because they are the same as us. As Father Bishop Foulet said in his interview May 13th, which was released May 13th, the CNS interview, he said that the other traditional communities are our brothers. So why fight with the Fraternity of St. Peter? Why fight with the Institute of Christ the King and so on? Archbishop Lefebvre called the Fraternity of St. Peter and called the indult communities traitors. That's what he called them. He said they have betrayed us. They have betrayed Catholic tradition. That was the opinion of Archbishop Lefebvre. From being traitors who have betrayed Catholic tradition because they are accepting the true Mass alongside of the demonic new Mass, and because they are accepting approval of this true Mass with the acceptance of Vatican II, quote unquote, in the light of tradition, this is a betrayal, and therefore they are traitors. They have betrayed us, they have betrayed us, they have betrayed us. Those are the words of Archbishop Lefebvre. But now they are our brothers. The Society of St. Pius X is changed. And then, what about do you foresee a new excommunication of the Society's bishops? No, I don't think so. Because, we are still good and blah, blah, blah. These honest souls, there are honest souls that are very impressed by traditional doctrine and worship. Even if they still attend the new Mass. They observe the Society. They follow it with interest. They seek to contact us. They ask for our publications and stay in communication with us. The same holds true for the Ecclesia Dei communities. And among diocesan priests who, thanks to the motu proprio of 2007, have begun to celebrate the Tridentine Mass. We are more than just a society with almost 600 priests. Our influence is deeply felt in the Church, and particularly in those circles which have a future. What is the message here? The future of the Catholic Church is in the conservative movements. We have to join those movements. We have to connect ourselves to all these indult communities. We've got to join them. And that the future is in them. The others are dying, and the future is in the conservative movements. They stay in communication with us, thanks to the great gift of the motu proprio. The Ecclesia Dei communities are being more positive with us. Some of them I've talked to also, they have said, well, we're very happy that you're coming back to Rome. You're coming back. Because when we come back, when we are approved, when we leave behind our former excommunicated status, which is a false status, false acclaim, then we justify their position of the last 25 years. We don't show that the Church is coming to tradition. We show that we are leaving tradition. And then continuing, so there's still a chance to regularize a society. But it seems that the bottom line is to recognize the council. So we're still aiming at this regularization. It's not left behind at all. Of course, we recognize that there was a Second Vatican Council, says Father Pfluger. Archbishop Lefebvre himself was a council father. Of course there was a Second Vatican Council. Archbishop Lefebvre was a council father. Nevertheless, we must admit that not only the post-conciliar reforms, but also certain texts of the council itself are in contradiction with important doctrines already defined by the Church. Certain ambiguities and novelties are at the heart of the present dissolution taking place within the Church. For Rome, it is unacceptable that we speak of the errors of the council. And so we talk about errors, ambiguities, and then errors. So that there are certain errors of the council. We have to criticize the council. There are ambiguities and novelties. But these ambiguities and these novelties, these errors, they're not as bad as they once were. They can be overcome. We can overcome these errors and these novelties. And so why should we start to make about face? The ambiguities and problems of the, one second. I don't understand why there hasn't been an honest and thorough investigation of the causes of the present situation of the Church. The Church is destroying herself, and silencing all discussion of the problem will not make the problem go away. Pretending the Council is not to blame in the post-conciliar crisis is burying one's head in the sand. So we have two different statements. There are errors in the Council, but there's also its ambiguities and novelties that are at the heart of the dissolution of the Church. Not the errors or the heresies that are at the heart, but the ambiguities and novelties. Leaving ourselves open so that we can find a way to explain away these ambiguities and novelties and find a way to have this to bring back this common understanding which was spoken of back in April. On the April 15th declaration, Bishop Fvuley stated that the magisterium of the Church is an ongoing magisterium, both from the beginning on and including Vatican II. So that it can be understood that Vatican II is part of the traditional magisterium of the Church. And we can understand Vatican II in the light of tradition. Like Father Chazelle says all the time, it's like a magic spray, like a deodorant. You go to the Vatican II and you put light of tradition spray, and it becomes okay. You just keep finding, what is that, we can believe in anything in the light of tradition. I believe that you need to be murdered in the light of tradition. I believe Jesus is not God, in the light of tradition. And so as long as you put the light of tradition spray, you can take anything and make it okay. Just like Father Chazelle says, his favorite expression in English is, with all due respect. Because after you say that, you can say anything. Excuse me, sir, with all due respect, you are blah, 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 blah. So instead of saying with all due respect, you can say light of tradition. The light of tradition sanctifies everything and baptizes everything in the council. We just got to put the light of tradition spray on it. So there's still a mention of errors, but not in the same way as we mentioned the errors before. And so a different approach. And then he speaks, very important element here in this interview, two parts of the crisis. And this is very important in the new theology of the society. Two parts of the crisis. Do you think there can still, why do you still, since you're not willing to compromise, so the previous pack, there's still errors in the council, there's ambiguities in the council, there's a problem in the Church. Since you seem so little disposed to compromise, why do you still hold discussions with the congregation for the doctrine of the faith? And Father Pfluger, because the Pope and Rome are realities inseparable from the faith. The loss of faith in the Church's structures, a loss of faith from which we have been spared, thanks be to God, is only one aspect of the crisis in the Church. For our part, we suffer also from a defect, the fact of our canonical irregularity. The status of the post-conciliar Church is imperfect, nor is our status the ideal. There are two parts of the crisis. One part of the crisis is the loss of faith in the Church structures. So this is tragic. The other part is our SSPX canonical irregularity. And so we can't claim to be perfect because we're irregular. It's like the husband whose wife runs off, or the wife commits adultery. The wife lives with another man, and then the wife says, you're not being a good husband. Well, why not? Because you don't even live with me. Now, if the wife is living with another man, and the wife kicks the husband out of the house, the husband, well, it's my fault that I'm not living with her. I would be a so much better husband if I was living with her. I can't just say it's all her fault just because she ran off with another man, and just because she's living in another house, and just because she's being a bad wife. I am also responsible because I'm not living with her. Now, what is the problem? The problem is the wife committed adultery. The wife married a new man. The wife is living in another house. It is not the problem of the husband. Our canonical irregularity is not a problem. The problem is that Rome has lost a faith. And they're the ones that created this canonical irregularity, and they fix it by fixing the problem of faith. But Father Pfluger says, well, there's two problems. One problem is they've had a loss of faith, which is one aspect, but it's only one aspect of the problem. You're not seeing the whole picture. And this is modernist speak. What color is the wall? It's black. Well, you're not seeing the whole picture. There's dirt on the wall. There's other things to consider. Don't be so univocal. During the course of this trip, we met one priest who is a professor at one of our seminaries. And he told Father Giselle and myself, you two are too univocal. Things are too black and white for you. And they're too black and white for Bishop Tissier. Bishop Tissier is being too bold, too black and white. We noticed many attacks of Bishop Tissier from the liberal faction within the society. They are preparing his sidelining and his death after Bishop Williamson. As it said in May, Rome said, we will deal with each of the three bishops separately and singly. What does that mean? Knock off number 1. See if number 2 and 3 conform. If they don't, knock off number 2. See if number 3 conforms. If they don't, knock off number 3. Divide and obliterate. That's the system. That's why it says we're going to deal with them separately and singly. The first one to go, October the 8th, Bishop Williamson. He received his expulsion letter October the 8th. I received mine October the 3rd. Father Giselle received his October the 4th. The next day, both of us in Singapore. October the 8th, Bishop Williamson received his expulsion letter from the society, which of course is invalid. But nonetheless, we did receive the letter. Are you referring to members of your community who refuse the discussions with Rome? Yes, but they are few. They are very few. Deep down, these persons set faith in opposition to law. Here's another point of the new theology of the society, which was brought out in the April 14th letter of Bishop Fellay to the three bishops. You set in opposition faith and authority. When faith and authority can never truly be at opposition with each other. That's the new teaching. How did we become a society of St. Pius X that was suspended in 1976 and then not accepted in any diocese throughout the world? How did this happen? Because faith is bigger than authority, and the authorities are not Bishop Fellay and Menzingen. They have authority over a couple of the cows that live outside their barn. But the authority is in the local bishop. The authority is in Rome. These are where the authorities are. They are the true authorities, and we legitimately and correctly disobey them every time we have Mass because they are not teaching the faith. The Bishop of Kansas City is the real authority here, and he is not teaching the faith. We disobey them every time we have Mass in St. Vincent's. Every single Mass in St. Vincent's is an act of disobedience, not approved by the diocese. We do it anyway because faith is greater than authority. Faith is greater than obedience. But he says there's a new problem. They are trying to set faith in opposition to law. This is the reason why we have to make a deal with Rome. We've got to get under Rome. We've got to overcome the difficulties because we're in a tragic situation. Archbishop Lefebvre also was very angry back in 1989 and 90. He said there are some souls that are sad that we're in this situation. Oh, it's a shame we're excommunicated. It's a shame we're irregular. These people have to make up their minds. That's what he said in 1990. We stand for the faith. And if we get condemned for it, that's to our glory. We're not sorry that we're being condemned for the faith. Several million of our ancestors have already been burned at the stake, already had their heads decapitated, already been executed and murdered because they didn't accept authority over the faith. They stayed with the faith over authority. So we're not sad. We rejoice in the death of the martyrs. We rejoice Like our Lord said in the Beatitudes, rejoice when men shall persecute and revile you for my name's sake. So we rejoice. We do not become sad. And then we ourselves are we ourselves, says Father Pfluger, Catholics' faithful tradition, suffer from the crisis in two ways. The first way he doesn't explain. We participate in this crisis, albeit on a different and higher level. There is no denying the obligation to take an active part in overcoming the crisis. And this combat begins with us by desiring to overcome our abnormal canonical status. Very important. How do we fight the crisis in the church? It begins with us. How does it begin with us? By desiring to overcome our abnormal canonical status. We must end our irregularity. That's the most important thing. If that is the case, then why not end it today? Go to the local bishop and say, give me a parish. Some other priests have done it. You want me to say the new Mass? Fine. You let me say the Latin Mass? Okay. You don't want me to condemn the errors? Fine. Because the most important thing is to end the canonical irregularity. What's most important? It used to be to preserve the Catholic faith. Now it is to end our canonical irregularity. And this explains all of the maneuvers, the speaking, the direction. We've got to end our canonical irregularity, and we've got to bring as many of those irregular Catholics back into the church. We're all irregular, and so we've got to be brought back into the church. That's why they use this new language in the society over the last 6 months and 1 year. We've got to return to the church. We've got to go back to the church. We've got to reunite with Rome. We never left the church. We can't return to that place which we have never left. We don't need to reunite with Rome because we're united with Rome right now. We're united with Rome during the holy sacrifice of the Mass. We're united with Rome in our Mass. We're united with Rome in everything that we do. We don't need to reunite with Rome. We are being faithful to Rome when we are faithful to eternal Rome and faithful to the Catholic faith. The irregularity is completely, not even secondary, it's way down the line, beyond secondary. So we're back to square one. Now, we speak again about the faith. Why not just go along with Rome? And Father Pfluger says, because we cannot exchange an imperfect status for one that is even less perfect. So see, they asked him, well, if the irregular status is the most important thing, then why not go along with Rome? Very intelligent question. So now Father Pfluger responds, because we cannot exchange an imperfect status for one that is even less perfect. So it's imperfect to be irregular with Rome, it's less perfect to have to omit certain truths of the faith. Union with Rome is supposed to be an improvement, not a mutilation. Having to omit certain truths of the faith, as well as being forbidden to criticize various doubtful and liberal positions, all this would be tantamount to mutilation. Notice the shift of language. Earlier on, he did say errors in the council. But now he's no longer repeating that. Now he's saying doubtful, liberal interpretations, doubtful and liberal positions. They're not doubtful. There's nothing doubtful about ecumenism. There's nothing doubtful about religious liberty. There's nothing doubtful about modernism. These are clear errors and heresies that lead souls to hell, no doubt. But they have become doubtful. We're maneuvering in this mush, going with partial truth and then mush, and partial truth and then mush. And this is a grave problem. Our Lord said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. It isn't that way anymore in the new society of St. Pius X. And so, liberal, doubtful, omit, instead of deny, complete change. And then, expulsion of Bishop Williamson. The next page, the rest of the interview is devoted to two people, Bishop Williamson and Bishop Pfluger. What about the chapter? We laid down 6 guidelines to be met before any reunion with Rome. And these 6 guidelines we've dealt with before, they're very bad guidelines, but renewing these 6 guidelines, the 6 conditions. And then there is as if there's no problem with them. And yet Bishop Pfluger said maybe he made a mistake, that the last 3 conditions should have been made necessary conditions and not suitable conditions. But Father Pfluger doesn't say that, just the 6 guidelines are laid down. On the internet, there is a debate over the issue, says the interviewer. Thundering condemnations are hurled at the society's leaders who are accused of treason. Father Pfluger, you are quoting Bishop Williamson, who was excluded from the general chapter by the great majority of superiors. That shows how strongly united we are. So now we've got to isolate one bad guy. There's only one bad guy, that's Bishop Williamson. So there are many accusations across the internet about what's going on. Yes, you're talking about Bishop Williamson. He has the latest on comments, and he says a few things, but not so much. It only comes out once a week, and he only has one little statement. Now he narrows it down to everything is Bishop Williamson. So there's only one bad guy, and he must be expelled. Part of this interview is damage control, to make sure that there will be very little response to the expulsion of Bishop Williamson. 4 bishops, consecrated Archbishop of Lefebvre, 3 of them will remain. Bishop Williamson is being expelled. He received his expulsion letter October the 8th. It's supposed to be publicly announced next week, next Tuesday, October the 23rd. And the expulsion, what's going to be the effect? Will it cause a grave scandal in tradition? Will people stand up and say, what's going on? Expelling Bishop Williamson is not about expelling one man from the society who has been pertinacious and disobedient. It is about expelling that old traditional teaching of the Society of St. Pius X for which he stands. A clear, understandable teaching, as opposed to 6 hours and 3 hours and 10 hours and 100 hours of mush, but a clear teaching. And then also a clear condemnation of the errors that anyone can understand. This is what the SSPX used to be the hallmark of the SSPX. Now it's mush. He's being expelled, and with that, the old teaching is being expelled. And we all know it. Speaking to priests coming to talk to us, priests calling us on the phone, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. They're afraid. Because they're afraid of being condemned for teaching publicly the truth. This is the new SSPX. And many have been condemned. Just in the last month, more expulsions. So Bishop Pfluger, certain groups have targeted Bishop Pfluger himself. Yes, Bishop Pfluger has certainly done more for the cause of Catholic faithful to tradition than all those who doubt him. He never acted impulsively. He never loses patience. And the 3 glories of Bishop Pfluger, about to be mentioned by Father Pfluger, the 3 great glories of Bishop Pfluger. Today we have the Tridentine Mass available to any priest. We have seen the lifting of the excommunications, the 2nd one. We have had the discussions about the problems of the council, the 3rd one. These are the 3 great glories. Thus, as a result, the council is no longer sacrosanct, and its glory turns to dust. Never mind the fact that they celebrated its glory only a few days ago. And all this remains true, notwithstanding the litany of praises heaped on the Second Vatican Council by the 50-year Jubilee. So don't pay attention to the Jubilee. Our Superior General has accomplished a great deal because he persevered in the negotiations and faithfully presented our theological positions. On that score, I observe that he has only one aim in view of the crisis of the Church, namely to preserve the faith and to serve the Church with all our heart. Why is it, says the Kirchlich Umschau, why is it that Bishop Pfluger seems to have done nothing against a smear campaign mounted against him over these last few months over the internet? The gentle Bishop Pfluger, who has not done anything against those that have unjustly attacked him. Father Pfluger responds, patience, kindness, and generosity appear to many as weaknesses, but this is not so. Faced with repeated attacks and harassment over the internet, we do not abandon our values and our principles. We deal with plotting and intrigues according to the laws of the Church. This may seem like procrastination, which can be annoying to some, but it can't be done any other way if we don't want to betray our own ideals. I would like to make this clear, best said from a German. I would like to make this clear. Let no one imagine that he can criticize authority with impunity. Patience, kindness, criticize authority, and you're dead. First, patience and kindness. Now let's look at the patience and kindness of the last month. Several patient and kind things happened in the last month. I was expelled from the society. Certainly that's a benefit to many. Father Chazelle was expelled from the society by Bishop Fellay in his patience and kindness, who did not respond to our answers and to our questions about our concerns and troubles with regard to the society. Bishop Williamson was kindly dismissed from the society on October the 8th. The two people, two men, a man and a woman in England, were told they were going to be refused Holy Communion 2 weeks ago if they continued to be moderators for Ignis Ardens by the direct will of the patient and kind Bishop Fellay. A man in Iloilo, Philippines, was told he was fired. His name is Joseph. I've mentioned him many times the last few days. He was fired from his job of being a gardener in our church in Iloilo. He used to come to Mass when I was a pastor there 6-7 years ago. And he was fired because he came to my Mass. He makes $75 a month. He has 7 children. He has no other means of income. So he is fired. He is thrown out. Why? Because he came to my Mass. And that, of course, is a great act of kindness. His children don't need to eat because they're useless eaters anyway. And then also, others are in a constant threat. In every city, I am told by the people, whether it be St. Mary's, here in Kansas City, over in the Philippines, in Singapore, in Asia, in England, they're all in the state of fear. What are they afraid of? They're afraid of the Bishop Fellay regime refusing them Holy Communion, throwing their kids out of the school. And so, who is the captain of the ship? Who is the head of the Society of St. Pius X? The kind and patient and gentle and generous Bishop Fellay. What is happening under his kind and gentle generosity and great holiness? Souls are being expelled. Souls are living in fear. Priests are being crushed. They are being thrown out. Their questions are not being answered. People are being refused Holy Communion. These complaints have gone to Menzingen about what's going on. No one is punished. Entire districts are in the state of fear. And this is a sign of generosity. Well, this is not the kind of generosity that we are interested in. But it's what's going on. The West has lost the faith. Then you have the Bishop Williamson must be expelled. His expulsion from the society, we'll just read here. What does this mean specifically? Let no one imagine that he can criticize authority with impunity. Then the Kirchlaufsumschau, however you say it, the church review says, what does this mean specifically? Father Pfluger. Bishop Williamson has been given fair warning. This is a sad moment in the history of our society. If he continues his internet campaign against the society and its superior general, then his expulsion from the society cannot be avoided. Besides his false ideas, he has plotted undercover. The veritable tragedy is the fact that for years he has not accepted the authority of the superior general. Notice the change. In the days of Archbishop Lefebvre, the tragedy was that people who call themselves Catholics have not accepted the authority of the Catholic Church teaching. They have not accepted the Catholic faith anymore. That they hated Archbishop Lefebvre, that they called him many names, was irrelevant. He was not bothered by that. But the great tragedy today is that he has not accepted the authority of the Superior General, which is a lie. Bishop Williamson entered the Society of St. Pius X in 1972. And from 1972 to 2012, he has obeyed almost every order given to him. Only one order has he disobeyed, and that is the order to shut down a liaison comments. Every other order he has obeyed. Why did he not shut it down? Because it needed to be a voice of professing the Catholic faith in a society that is no longer clearly professing it. And he asked Bishop Fellay several times, please explain to me what is wrong with the liaison comments. Tell me where I have made a mistake, that I might correct them. And there was no response and no explanation. Several times, Bishop Williamson privately, I'm telling you publicly, Bishop Williamson did not. He privately told Bishop Fellay, can you please explain to me what is wrong with the liaison comments? Please tell me what's wrong so that I might correct it, or I might explain to you why it is not wrong. No response. You must close down liaison comments. He was told he could not say his public masses, could not do public function as a society bishop. He had to live in an attic. He lives in an attic in England, right up there with all the mice and everything else. He lives in the top of the attic of a house, of St. George's house. He lives in the attic, so he gets good exercise, going up and down the steps every day. But he lives in the attic, and he's lived in that attic since 2009. He was shipped out of Argentina. He was shipped to Argentina. He was shipped to England. He was told to not preach on the subject, which he has not done. He has only written his liaison comments, and he has always been very circumspect in those comments, and only more open in recent months. And even then, always with charity, always with clarity, nothing that can be criticized justly by anyone who has a just mind. And now, what is his problem? He has not accepted the authority of the Superior General. Completely false. He does accept the authority of the Superior General. But he has assigned to himself a God-given mission. Before the General Chapter, he rallied priests and faithful to rebellion. For a Catholic bishop, this is very serious. And of course, that's not true. He didn't rally priests to rebellion. He came to our priest meeting in May in 2012 in the Philippines. And we were all upset about the deal. There were about 11 of us at the meeting, and we all talked and talked and talked, and we all yelled at Father Couture. He received 20 hours from us. Bishop Williamson was there, but he was mostly silent. It was us priests who were doing the talking. He never put pressure on us. He didn't tell us to go to complain. He didn't tell us to disagree. We, on our own, blasted. And he was mostly silent. He said almost nothing during those 20 hours of discussion. Some of the times he left. Most of the time he was just sitting there. When he was there at that priest meeting in May of 2012 with the permission of the Superior General. He was put there, allowed to be there because of Bishop Pfluger. He would not have come otherwise. And then, what are the important challenges that we have to face? So Father Pfluger says, we witness presently a worldwide persecution of the Christians in the East. Our task is to draw our attention to our persecuted brethren and to come to their aid. The General Chapter's declaration made this clear. We have to come to the aid of persecution. This is a communist tactic. You know, that women do it all the time. You know, when they're being rotten to their husbands or being rotten to their kids, what do they say? You don't know how you make me feel. It's a genuine feminine way they react. They torture the husband, they torture the children, they make life hell for everybody, and then what do they say? You don't understand how this makes me feel. You're persecuting me. Why did you say that? To distract. We are concerned about the persecuted brethren in the East. Have they done anything about the persecuted brethren in the East? Have they sent any support to Iraq where Catholics are being killed? Have they sent any support to the Middle East where they're being murdered? Even verbal support? The answer is no. Why do you talk about this? To distract from those whom they are persecuting. They are persecuting their own faithful. They are persecuting their own priests. And so what do they talk about? The Superior General being persecuted. And the people in the East being persecuted. Thereby distracting from those who are receiving persecution and unjust persecution from Menzingen. One of them right now is Bishop Williamson. He's being unjustly thrown out. We witnessed others be thrown out over the recent years as well. But this is the biggest one. Throwing out one of the 4 bishops. For what? Teaching Catholic truth. And that's why he's being thrown out. Because he will not bow down to the modernist direction of the society. Even though he has been obedient on everything. He's not going out and going around the world and doing all kinds of confirmations and so on. He did go to Brazil last month at the request of Father Thomas Aquinas, but that's not society territory. He went to the places under the care of other priests, so there was no problem with that. He didn't go in society territory. Father Giselle and I are doing that. We're going straight into society territory. That's our territory. Bishop Williamson did not do that. Even when he went to Brazil, he went at the request of Father Thomas Aquinas to his chapels, not society chapels. And he doesn't need permission from a superior of the society. He's a bishop, for heaven's sakes. He doesn't need permission to preach the faith. He doesn't need permission to issue confirmations, especially in those chapels that are not even our chapels. He didn't go to our chapels. So it's a false accusation, being accused of doing that without permission. And then, let's stop the persecution in the West, and defend and preserve the faith. And remember that the best way to do that, the materialism, atheism, coupled with false religions, are all these are standing more and more in the way of a healthy Catholic life, says Father Pfluger. We are speaking here of the decisive mission for the society, to help believers of goodwill to keep the faith in times of difficulty and to live that faith. So that sounds very good. This is our task at the present time, and a magnificent and sublime one at that, if we use our God-given talents to spread the fire of the divine